In the quiet hours of the night over Burkina Faso, the silence was shattered by the unmistakable roar of drones overhead. A powerful strike followed, swift, surgical, and deliberate. Within minutes, an entire Western-backed mercenary unit lay destroyed. To the casual observer, it might appear as just another battlefield success, but in reality, this single drone strike carried weight far beyond the borders of Burkina Faso. It was a message, a declaration, a challenge. The shockwaves reverberated not just through Africa, but across the world. The man behind this operation? Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso. At just 36 years old, Traoré has positioned himself as one of the most defiant voices against Western domination in Africa. Since coming to power in September 2022, he has been openly critical of French neocolonialism, of Western interference, and of the double standards that have plagued Africa for decades. But until now, many in the West dismissed him as just another firebrand military leader. This drone strike changed that perception completely. Because here's the truth. It was not just an attack on mercenaries. It was a direct signal to Western powers that Africa will not wait for permission to defend its sovereignty. It was the clearest demonstration yet that African nations, especially those in the Sahel, are moving towards full military and technological independence. Let's break this down. First, the context. Burkina Faso, like many of its neighbors, has been under constant pressure from terrorism in the Sahel region. Jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS have ravaged villages, destabilized entire provinces, and killed tens of thousands over the last decade. Traditionally, Burkina Faso and other Sahelian states relied heavily on Western military aid, French troops, American intelligence, European funding. But despite all this support, terrorism only grew worse. To many Africans, it began to look less like help and more like control. When Traoré took power, he promised to change this. He cut ties with France, expelled French troops, and began forging new alliances. Notably, he turned to Turkey, Russia, and China. And among his most important acquisitions were drones, Bayraktar TB2s, and other unmanned aerial vehicles capable of carrying out precise strikes. This technology gave Burkina Faso something it had never truly had before, the ability to control its skies. So when intelligence confirmed the presence of Western-backed mercenaries allegedly interfering in Sahelian operations, Traoré's government decided to act, and act decisively. The strike wasn't just military, it was symbolic. Now, let's talk about why this shocked the world. For the first time in recent history, an African leader openly defied the West, not with words, but with technology and precision usually associated with NATO. Drone warfare has always been a tool of Western powers. From Afghanistan to Iraq, from Libya to Somalia, the drone has symbolized Western dominance. But now the tables are turning. The very nations once targeted by drones are mastering them. And here lies the political message. Burkina Faso is saying to the world, we are no longer pawns, we are players. Think about the wider implications. This single strike changes dynamics in three major ways. First, military psychology. African states have always been on the defensive, portrayed as weak, dependent, and incapable of modern warfare. But now, Burkina Faso shows it can conduct advanced military operations with global precision. That changes not only how the world views Africa, but how Africans view themselves. Second, geopolitical balance. France, which once considered Burkina Faso part of its exclusive sphere of influence, now faces a new reality. Its bases are gone, its troops are gone, and now its influence is under direct military threat. For Paris, this is a nightmare. Third, the idea of unity. Burkina Faso is not acting alone. Traoré is part of the AES alliance, an emerging military coalition with Mali and Niger. This alliance is explicitly anti-Western intervention and pro-African sovereignty. So the drone strike, then, is not only Burkina Faso's act, it's a signal from the entire Sahel bloc. The West, of course, has responded cautiously. Publicly, officials speak of escalation risks and the need for dialogue. But behind closed doors, this drone strike will be analyzed as a major blow to Western credibility in Africa. If African nations can independently wage drone warfare, then Western leverage dramatically decreases. But of course, drone warfare comes with complications. Reports from independent watchdogs like Human Rights Watch have already accused Burkina Faso of civilian casualties in earlier drone operations. Over 100 civilians are said to have died in strikes in 2023 and 2024. Critics argue that by relying heavily on drones, governments risk repeating the same mistakes the West made, using technology to solve deep, complex conflicts. Still, to many Africans, this is a necessary evolution. For too long, their nations were dictated to. Now, they are taking control. Traoré himself has framed this as not a war against the West, but a struggle for African dignity. He calls it the final liberation. Let's pause and reflect. What does final liberation mean? For centuries, Africa has been controlled through various means. First, colonization, direct rule. Then, neocolonialism, economic dependency, cultural influence, military presence. But now, leaders like Traoré argue that Africa must liberate itself in all dimensions: military, economic, and psychological. So the drone strike, therefore, is more than an attack. It is a symbol of that liberation in motion. It sends a message: Africa will no longer beg for protection. Africa will defend itself. But here's the question the world is asking: what happens next? Will the West retaliate, economically, politically, or even militarily? Or will they accept that Africa is entering a new phase of independence? Already there are signs of pressure. Sanctions, diplomatic isolation, media campaigns framing Traoré as a dictator. But in the streets of Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey, people are celebrating. They see him not as a dictator, but as a freedom fighter. This divide in perception is critical. To the Western media, Traoré is dangerous. To many Africans, he is a hero. And this difference may shape global politics for years to come. It's also worth asking, will other African nations follow this path? Imagine if Nigeria, South Africa, or Egypt decided to pursue a similar independent defense strategy. The global balance of power could dramatically shift. In the long run, the strike may prove to be the spark that ignites broader African resistance against foreign interference. But much will depend on how Traoré and his allies manage the aftermath. Will they use this new power responsibly? Or will they fall into the trap of authoritarianism masked as liberation? For now, one thing is clear. The drone strike shocked the world because it shattered a long-standing assumption that Africa must always depend on others for power. That myth is dead. From the deserts of the Sahel to the skyscrapers of Paris and Washington, everyone heard the message. Africa is no longer waiting. Africa is acting. And, as Captain Ibrahim Traoré often says, we are not afraid. We will stand, We will fight. We will be free. The world has been warned.